Okay, it's 7 o'clock, and I'm going to call the regular caucus meeting of the city of Twinsburg to order on Tuesday, June 22nd. Shannon, would you call the roll?
Mr. Scafidi?
Here.
Mr. Fury?
Here.
Mr. Bellin?
Here.
Mrs. Walker?
Present.
Mrs. Stoffer? Here. Mr. Barr?
Okay. Looks like we have no presentations at this time, right, Shannon?
That's correct.
Okay, and items for discussion? There are none. Do we have any audience participation?
First, we have Bob Hughes.
Bob Thews, 2229 Demi Drive in the Meadowwood Plan. I think it would be courteous of the city to inform the people in Meadowwood and in Ethan's Green when the speed limits change through the roundabout. Every night around 4:35, the speed limit goes up to about 35 miles per hour, and that's primarily heading south. Okay, so for some reason, we who come in and try to get into that stuff, we aren't informed of those changes in the speed limit. So it would be nice, A, to inform us, and second, it would be nice periodically, not often, but periodically, to have a police presence there to tell people that, hey, that's the way it is, okay? It's too, they're going through there too fast. I almost got hit on the sidewalk while I was doing the front of the thing. That's the way people are flying through there. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Chuck Bonacci.
Hi, Chuck.
Good afternoon or evening.
Hello, Chuck.
Chuck Bonacci, 11327 Heritage Drive in the beautiful city of Twinsburg. Come here before you because there's legislation before you guys to change the structure of the council meetings. And I understand the desire to streamline the process and that it could be a long time. You typically have the finance meeting, then you have the caucus meeting, then you have this council meeting. It's 3 hours of consecutive meetings, and that's a long time. But I have some concerns about how that structure will be. Because with the caucus, there's a dialogue, an opportunity for dialogue between the residents with concerns or individuals with concerns and city council. And during the regular council meeting, folks can come up here and speak their mind, but it's not that collaborative dialogue. So I just would hope that in this restructuring, there's a provision to have a dialogue with residents, because there's
No
a
change to that structure.
I believe that's been incorporated in.
Okay.
When we get to that, I'm going to ask Mr. Maestros to speak on that, what the changes are.
that's just the concern that I have, and I just want to have the same access to the government, and I think other residents would probably appreciate to have that same access as well.
I agree.
So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
That's all we have this evening.
Okay, great, thanks. We'll move on to pending legislation. We have ordinance 44, 2021. This is an ordinance, is the annual recodification and editing of the codified ordinances for the city, and it stands on our second reading tonight, so we will be voting on this. Is there any further discussion?
This is an
Council.
annual event. This is standard, and we'll get the
Standard thing.
changes for our codified ordinance book.
Right, okay. Then we have ordinance 45, 2021, and that's, this ordinance is regarding amending codified ordinance 111 regarding council. And again, Mr. Maestros, would you please speak on some of the changes that were made, if you have them? Now, this is only on first reading, I believe.
I think it's on second reading.
Is it on second
but-
It
tonight?
shows first reading on our agendas.
Yeah, we had it before you 2 weeks ago,
Dan's
but
on first.
there were some changes made from 2 weeks ago to tonight based upon some discussion with council, and that being, the original idea of this was to try to eliminate that potential 20-minute gap where everybody sits around and waits between the end of the caucus and the start of the council meeting at 7:30. And coming 2 weeks ago out of that meeting, the idea was that maybe we just eliminate the caucus and fold that into the council meeting, because really the only difference between the caucus and the council meeting was the discussion of the pending legislation. So, talking with Shannon, what we proposed in this is to change the council meeting, have it start at 7 p.m., and then include agenda item on the standard council meeting, discussion of pending legislation immediately following the audience participation. Because as Mr. Bonacci just mentioned, oftentimes residents will come and speak about something pending before council that night, and generally there's not a response. And I get this theory that in a caucus there's this free-flowing conversation, but really there isn't. I mean, the residents can speak, but there's generally not a back and forth. But in this setup, the residents would have the opportunity to speak, and immediately following would be council's discussion, similar to what we're having right now regarding the legislation that's on that night. So that would just be folded into the council meeting, and we could talk about that. The other changes that are in 111 are really just capturing changes that council has made over the past 12 to 18 months in its rules. Council has its own set of rules of council that you have changed. For a while there, we were changing them pretty regularly, but we made changes to those, and we haven't adopted everything that's in 111, that being council's rules, and you've done this by motion. So what we've done is taken what council has passed by motion, incorporated them into these rules, and that's what you have in front of you tonight for second reading. The only change tonight from how you've been operating, like I said, is eliminating that separate caucus meeting, folding the pending legislation discussion into the council meeting right after the audience participation. And that was the thought when we put it together that way, so.
So, but under the change, do the residents have 2 opportunities to speak? Will they have it during that caucus
There's
session?
only one meeting.
And then during the council session?
No.
There's only one meeting.
Which is all council session.
I'd rather stay with the two sessions than have it molded
I would
into
too.
one.
I mean, that was the purpose of it.
Yep.
Okay? And it was supposed to be our work session. It's our workshop, time for us to be able to talk and ask any questions that we want to ask, not being into the legislative mode, not conducting the regular council meeting. And then it gave the residents an opportunity to speak. And, then they had an opportunity to speak at the council meeting if they wanted to. But typically, and Mr. Maestros is right, there was not always dialogue going on in caucus, but there was an opportunity for it if we found it necessary. So that's how I look at it. But Shannon, aren't you going to show us a sample agenda?
Yes, attached.
Before.
Yeah, attached to your email that you received on Friday, there was a sample agenda. It's also
then
out
I
there in
missed
the
it. I'm
box.
sorry.
That's okay. It's also out there in the box. App
Okay.
For you to look at. And just for clarification, it stands on its first reading, so we'll read it the second time tonight and then pass any changes at the
In
next
2 weeks.
meeting.
Okay.
So if, Mr. Maestros, if we are,
What do you think?
if the idea then is to keep 2 separate meetings, which is fine,
I don't know.
are we able to address the potential 20-minute, with still having 2 meetings? Because I was under the impression that the start time of the council meeting was the one that had to be specifically laid out in terms of what time it was going to start. Is that correct?
That's the difficulty, is that the council meetings, you want to have a council meeting at a designated start time so the residents know when that meeting starts.
Right.
And that's why we always had 7:30. So we were trying to solve a problem that maybe is going to create more problems in attempting to solve it. Okay, that being that if council's perfectly fine with the downside is there's periods of time you might sit around for 10, 15, 20 minutes waiting for 7:30 to arrive. If that's the price to pay to have these 2 meetings, then that's the price to
Okay.
pay to have 2 meetings.
Okay.
I don't know how else to get around it.
Okay, and I look at it this way, that the caucus meeting starts at 7 o'clock, and if we have a council meeting start immediately following the end of caucus, they know to come at 7 o'clock. I mean, because we're gonna go right into the regular council meeting, so it could be 7:15, it could be 7:10, it could be 7:25.
Does the
But-
charter allow that, though? I don't.
We've done
The
that.
the charter doesn't state the time of the meeting.
Okay.
The charter
Right,
just
okay.
says it's on the second.
We've done
We've
that
actually
before.
moved the meeting from 8 o'clock to 7:30 in the past.
Right.
Right.
So.
I just didn't know if, under your scenario, in theory, it would be a fluid start time of the council meeting, right? The caucus would always start at 7.
Right.
But the council meetings might start at 7:05, it might start at 7:45. That's,
But for those that want to attend, I mean, if,
well, I understand.
they know to come at 7 o'clock.
Right,
If they don't want to miss any of it,
right.
because it's not going to start at 7 o'clock, the council meeting. It'll be at least 10, 15 minutes.
Right, right.
So that's a pretty good gauge.
Okay.
So,
I'm not in favor of the changes if that's what it
I
falls
agree.
into,
I'm not either.
so.
Okay, so
I'll
then,
vote against
then
it
are we
next
just,
week.
are we just voting, like, is the
Just
is the
vote it
whole
down.
thing moot then?
You
We're
can
not gonna
vote it
change
down,
anything?
you can
Well, it's
table
only on
it.
second reading tonight, so.
Well, no, but what we've got in front of us, Mr. Maestros has made modifications to, and we need to give him some direction in terms of what we want to see.
Or we table it and bring it up at another time.
do that
Or
too.
we vote it down in a week, but wouldn't vote for this at this point.
Okay.
We can just, 2 weeks ago, we had that.
Right.
We were asked to change
I
it
know.
to this.
I
That's
know.
why we are here tonight with the changes,
Right.
because we had
Okay.
it the
Well,
other
no,
way.
truthfully, that was a last minute change because Mr. Bellin brought it up, okay? And it was brought up right at that meeting because that's not how this started to be. It started out to be that we were going to make it a smooth transition right into the regular caucus council meeting. And then Mr. Bellin brought it up, and why did we have it, and so on and so forth, and then it morphed into this, what it is now. And after digesting it for 2 weeks, I'm just really not happy with it. And I agree with Mr. Bonacci that, we should have that opportunity.
Mr. Scafidi, so for direction for the next meeting, what would you like? Would you like section 1 to go back to what it was? And then we still need to incorporate the other additional changes that are before you.
I'm not opposed to having the caucus meeting start at 7 and then the council meeting start immediately following caucus. I would support that.
And if that's not available, I would support 7 and 7:30 the way we have and incorporate the rules into 111 anyway.
That's fine.
So
Me-
you're
yeah.
saying you can't do it just by moving it into there, that you have to have an official start time?
No, I mean, you can, the problem we had with immediately is it never, there was always, and that's why I put language in there, the council president will say, okay, we'll start the council meeting in 5 minutes or something to that effect if you wanted to take a break.
Right.
It seemed that got everybody all exercised, not on council, got the social media world all exercised that the council president could then declare the start of the council meeting at any time he or she chooses. So that's why I didn't say immediately, because it wasn't, it could be a 5-minute wait,
I guess
so,
I missed the social media. I didn't know.
Okay. I mean, and again, I don't want you to think that I'm necessarily wanting to get rid of I'm happy with.
I mean, that was your
Yeah,
suggestion.
I'm happy with the way it is now. I have no problems with that, so.
Okay.
Okay.
So, I don't know how anybody else feels, but. Mrs. Walker, Mrs. Stoffer,
I don't
any
think
thoughts
there's- I don't think there's a problem with how we're doing it.
currently?
Yeah.
I don't
7
either.
o'clock caucus, 7:30 council. It's not very often that we have to wait.
It's fine.
Okay. Then we will just remove it.
well, we still need the other red line changes that have already
Yeah,
been
the other
motioned by
changes.
council. We're just gonna adopt those to put those in, so.
Okay.
So we'll leave the 7:30, the way the timing reads, we won't change.
And we're just going to officially adopt everything that we've already done by
Right.
motion.
Right,
That's fine.
so we'll take the timing back to the way it was, and for the third and final reading in 2 weeks.
So we'll read this tonight, and then we'll have the,
The
go
final
back
version.
for the final reading in
Right.
2 weeks. Okay.
So the only change you'll see is in 11101, we'll go back to what it said prior in addition to all the changes that are there.
Okay.
Just so everybody knows what they'll see at the next, when we read it for the final time.
Got it. Okay. Any other discussion on that? Okay, all right, next we have we have ordinance 46, 2021. This is the 2022 tax budget, which will be submitted to the county prior to July 15th deadline. This will also allow the city to participate in the distribution of local government funds. We are applying for 3 funds to have retried tax as a source of revenue. These will include the fire pension for 0.3, police pension for 0.3 mils, and the police and fire levy fund for 2.4 mils. Anybody have anything else for that?
This is standard, we submit this, and I understand this tax budget mirrors the normal budget. It's not altered from what we passed in March.
For the current year.
Thank you.
For 2021.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, next we have Resolution 49, 2021. This is a resolution opposing the provisions of the Ohio Senate budget amendment, which would effectively prohibit new construction of publicly owned broadband networks.
So, you want me to start? Okay. So I attended the Community Relations Board meeting last week, and I was unaware of this until I went to that meeting. The library, the township, and Reminderville are very concerned about this, and I forwarded this draft resolution to the law director, and the mayor had already received a copy and forwarded it. Their concern is that as fiber optic broadband cable is put through communities, there's no longer a requirement to include public entities, and they fear that that will cut off future bandwidth for libraries, public buildings, schools, in the Senate bill that is down there today. So I know that Casey Weinstein opposes this from the House, and I had not heard back from Christine Rogner as of yet from the Senate side. But I think that it's fair that if there's that many concerns from our neighboring communities in the library, that when you look at this, I mean, I'm not sure how much it would affect Twinsburg, but if people are going to put infrastructure through our city, we should have a benefit, as we have in the past, when Adelphia and Cablevision and those people put in. Our city, our public buildings were connected, and that's how Cable 9 and Community 1 were still funded. So that's where this came from. Dave, is there anything I missed?
Well, it would also prohibit, I think you hit the high points, but it prohibits cities from actually installing broadband. I mean, such as Hudson and Fairlawn.
Or
who've already done it.
Independence, yeah.
Installed and spent significant taxpayer dollars to get it in place. Now, we haven't done that here, and I don't know that we have any plans necessarily to do it, but it would prohibit the city of Twinsburg from doing it in the future and just limit our options going down the road. So that's another big bar to this legislation that's pending that we'd like to oppose. So, and this is really just a resolution opposing that to send down to the county, which will send down to the state.
Anybody else? Okay, then that's all the legislation. Anybody have any miscellaneous tonight?
Yes, sir.
No? Okay, then we will adjourn the caucus meeting at 7:20, and we will start our council at 7:30. Anybody wishing to speak before council, please feel free to come up and sign up at the podium. Thank you.